Welcome back to Toys on Tap. This week is another incredible week. If you loved last week with the backstory behind Quang, you're going to like this week with the backstory and where Creature Bazaar is as a whole and as we approach SummerSlime this year. If you want more Toys on Tap, you can like, follow, rate, review wherever you get podcasts. It lets us get out to more people, and that's huge for us. So thank you if you do that. You want to follow us on all socials at Toys on Tap. And if you want to support the show even more as a sponsor or as an episode release or anything like that, reach out to us through DMs or through email. Now let's get to this week's episode of Toys on Tap. This is part 2. I mean, you don't really need a refresher because people are going to find out that we recorded both on the same day. So we are in your story of, we started out in your life, you as a kid, your toys, your journey through art, and kind of got through all the way to the point where you start meeting the people that we know now as the Creature Bazaar or like SummerSlime team, basically. And we are just on the cusp of that. And so I think where we left off is the shows that happen after Designer Con, like the things that you would do for the artists, and you're starting to realize that you have a morsel of an idea. So let's start there. But before we do, please once again introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Quang. I'm one of the owners of Creature Bazaar, and I'm here to just kind of, I guess, let people know like where we started, where we're going, all of that.
Heck yeah. All right, so start laying some groundwork. You have the morsel of an idea, not even a full team yet, and Brandon, correct, has the thought to go through with other things.
Yeah, so like, I'm pretty private, but then there's like these moments where I'm very social and outgoing, and usually it's like building up, and then I just kind of like explode during a convention.
Yeah.
And I think Brandon is a very similar thing, and when we met and became very, very fast friends, we just started bopping around with these ideas of like, oh, like we can do all these things together. And I think a moment that he, I'll say that I didn't even know him at the time, but I believe it's in 2016, Brandon actually does the Designer Con after party, in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
And so his, like, I guess real world job is that he owns a bunch of bars and restaurants.
Oh, cool.
And so he owns this German themed bar in Pasadena at the time. And that's where the Designer Con after party is, or one of the Designer Con after parties. And so from that, you can kind of see that he in his own way is like kind of like he likes creating these events and things, and pooling artists and people together. And I attended that event, and I didn't even realize that was him. We don't actually become friends till 2017. When we start I meet him, and then we start painting at my house on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2018, things are going, Designer Con moves to Anaheim, and then I have like one of my little backyard parties, and everybody's there, it's really fun. And then in 2019, Brandon tells me that he's going to go to Japan for a trip. And at this point, I had actually never taken like a real vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Like just on my own. Like I've done like some family things or whatever, but like I've never really taken like a long vacation for myself. And a few things were kind of like falling apart on his trip. And then I was like, hey man, can I go with you? And can I just take over your trip? And he's just like, yeah. And so we kind of go and we start meeting all these different artists and people in Japan. And I think and this is really where the foundation of Creature Bazaar starts. Like, we're like, oh, we should just do something. Like,
Hmm.
and the idea of Creature Bazaar had been like bubbling around. He's the one that actually came up with the name, you know, and so we had sort of talked about like let's do something. We don't know what this is, like let's throw an event. And I think a lot of it was like event based, you know. We don't know if it's just like a one-off show. None of that is really like figured out yet. But I just know this because we actually register the name Creature Bazaar in March when we come back from that trip
Okay.
in February. And the one thing that we him and I, like, it's like we've known each other for forever, but we met in, like I said, in 2017. But when I was like, hey, let me like kind of like take over this trip, part of it was I want to meet all of these toy makers on their home turf.
Hmm.
Because what I had realized at a certain point was when Americans go to Japan, people don't think of Japan as like a like they think of Japan like LA.
Hmm.
They don't realize that when most Americans say they're going to Japan, it means they're going to Tokyo. But not everybody lives in Tokyo.
Right.
It's like, Japan's an entire country, And so I was like, hey, let's just do this and let's meet everybody on their home turf. And that lays this insane foundation for Creature Bazaar as the guys that are willing to go anywhere at the deepest. Like we will meet you wherever you are, despite how far away it is. We'll travel for 9 hours
Hmm.
just to go see people where they're from, And it was really cool because that trip like kind of changed a lot for us. It started our real relationship with the Headlock guys, the Gargamel guys, like,
Yeah.
Shirahama Toy, like all the different factories out there.
So on this trip, you and Brandon are talking through as well, probably what it looks like to do Creature Bazaar. How do we even come up with the name to get that rolling?
We had a bunch of different ideas of companies that
Hmm.
we wanted to start together, and we had just laundry lists of names
Hmm.
of things. And he just, one day he kind of was like, "What about this?" And then, and I don't really remember how it happened, but I was like, "That's it,"
Yeah.
like, and because I have a background in like fashion, streetwear, whatever, because at this point I had worked for like I don't know if you're familiar with the clothing company LRG.
Yeah. It's a skate brand.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I had done their photography at this point for, I don't know, maybe 10 years.
Hmm.
I'd been with Ruka for like the same amount of time. I had toured with a lot of bands. There's a um at this point I was like touring around with a band called the Gym Class Heroes.
Cool.
Um and so I had like an extensive background with all that. And I was I don't know if you're familiar with, there's like a fashion socks brand called Stance,
Hmm.
and I helped start that with a bunch of my friends. And of course there was Skull Candy. So there was a lot of that stuff. So I was like into it, and I just felt like I was like, oh, Creature Bazaar, like that would look cool. That works as like a graphic.
Yeah.
There's something that like it's like there's like a billboard presence with it, and then obviously Bazaar can meet. It's spelled as the marketplace, but when you're saying it, it's just like, oh, it means weird.
Yeah.
So
It's a catchy name, and it's a really good name. Especially now seeing all the things that you guys do and create, and the videos of like the parade things that are walking of all the creatures and stuff is so
yeah,
you come
it
back
worked out
from
really good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you meet all those people, you're willing to travel all over Japan, which I like is such a cool way to do life, in especially meeting with artists, because you're willing to say like, hey, if you have 30 minutes, we're gonna head out to you, we want to talk, we want to hang
Oh
out
yeah,
for a
no,
little
I
bit.
mean, there was a time we went out to like Nagoya,
Hmm.
and it's a few hours away by bullet train, and we basically went in first thing in the morning and we left on the last train at night.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that trip. The extent of that trip is like going to San Francisco or something.
Is this
like
your
that.
first trip to Japan?
This was my second trip.
Okay.
But my first specifically for this.
Yeah.
Like I had gone before after a photo shoot. I was doing like a photo shoot in like Hong Kong, and then part of the trip I made them like let me go hang out in Tokyo for like a week or two, with some of my friends.
Cool.
But this was like specifically focused on like meeting up with our toy maker friends and like factory guys and everything like that, on their turf,
Mm-hmm.
doing what they wanted to do. Because a lot of times it would just, I just realized that like when people go do those things, it's primarily egocentric.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, like I want to do what you're doing, you know? And I think we were the first guys to really position things that way.
It's a cool way to start. When you get back, when's the start of Creature Bazaar as a convention?
So we basically, in June of that year.
Mm-hmm.
So I end up kind of figuring out within that time that like the photo world is drying up.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I do for work and the way that I do it, like magazine ads, like campaigns, all of that's sort of ending for an algorithmic sort of like commerce marketplace.
Yeah.
Like it goes from like creative advertising to essentially like e-com photos, like glamorous e-com photos,
Mm-hmm.
is what people want. And so when when you're talking about like a traditional ad campaign, there might be like 10 iconic images that companies like build towards to like, oh, this is what we're rallying around. And then they're like, oh, no, we need to actually post every single day, 3 times a day. Like we're not advertising in magazines anymore. We're doing it on Instagram.
Yeah, which is such a big shift.
Right. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. Like that's not how my mind works. It's like it's very difficult for me to just shoot something on a white backdrop and make it look cool. Like I'm known for like blowing up cars,
Mm-hmm.
or like lighting a dude on fire. I mean, we did this for an ad where we just lit a dude on fire and had him skating down the street.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, that like that world is ending.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Brandon and I are pivoting really fast. And that's when, it goes from, we have that, there's a decon that happened before that. And I remember this vividly where I'm like, oh yeah, we can do something here. And it was like with Paul Kaiju. I'm like, Paul, like we can do something like, you're already doing SummerSlime, but maybe we could do another show up here. And, he's like, I don't know. And then Brandon's like, oh, we can like kind of go bigger,
Mm-hmm.
And then so in June 2019, well, I'll rewind a little bit. So when I figure out like, oh, the photo world for me is sort of ending, that I actually go back to Japan in April. And I'm hanging out there, and I'm basically Justin Ishmael at that time gets the license for a bunch of the Ray Harryhausen properties.
Cool.
And so we work on the Ray Harryhausen Cyclops. And we're just talking about that. And we're getting that going, and I'm helping project manage that. And that's when I'm starting to bop around Japan and started talking more about Creature Bazaar. And then in June of that year, we kind of like fully announced like, hey, we're going to be doing something like a show.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what's your interest? And then in that year, that's when things are ramping up. And we're not necessarily advertising ourselves as like Creature Bazaar booths and stuff, but we're like doing things together.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mark Nagata actually has his own convention. I don't know if you're aware of that.
That he's running?
Yeah, he had his own convention.
I did not know that.
It ran in conjunction with his show at the Japanese American Art Museum.
Cool.
It was called a Kaiju Con or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we vended at that show, um, as a group, um, and and it's sort of like we're developing more and more things, and in that 2019 is when we actually have the first Creature Bazaar booth at Decon, and that was like a kind of like a big moment, I think, for us,
Mm-hmm.
because that's when we were like, oh well, like, because it was never like, Brandon and I are like the two, I guess, founders of it, but it was always sort of like a gang, and we
Yeah.
always kind of like voted on stuff together, like, oh, should we do this or should we do that, and everybody kind of get together, and we just have like group chats of like, no, I don't like this, I like this, or whatever. Like we were doing all sorts of things like that, and it was like this booth at Decon was like kind of that, which was like the idea was like just corralling all the vendors that like each other together in one zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, at this point, I don't know if I had really become friends with Pusshead yet. Like we knew of each other.
Yeah. What a name! Holy hell!
Oh yeah, he's awesome. He's one of the greats. And but he's a guy who, like, anywhere he goes, he sells out of things. And Paul Kaiju, it's the same thing where like you could stick those booths anywhere
Mm-hmm.
and they would sell out. So Ben that owns Decon and I are like old friends. And I just told him, I was like, let me take over the most awful section of Decon. And then he's like, what? He's like, I'll give you a good section. I was like, no, 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 no. Like we don't need that. Like with the makers that we're talking and all the people we're pooling together, we'll make a little zone in your convention, that people will just come to, and I like being out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that Brandon and I both sort of like really like enjoy it, as the idea that like people will come to us. We don't need to have the booth in front of the convention, and essentially like give that to the artists that actually need it. I don't mean that in an insulting way, but there's like, when you're younger, maybe it's better to be in the front as opposed to in the back by the bathroom,
Yeah.
and leave that to us, because and maybe that's our arrogance or whatever, but it's just like, oh, we'll just sell our shit anyway,
Yeah.
but I would walk around Decon and look at these areas and be like, oh man, like this area sucks. Like and when looking at those vendors' faces, I was like, this is awful. But why not just put us back here? And then here's the thing is, if you put us back here with all of our other friends, it's still going to be a party anyway.
Hell yeah.
And so that's when that kind of happens. And then from there, we're having, so it's, it's this is, I think, around when like Brandon's really like, oh, we can do more. We can do much, much more than like a backyard party and all this. But we still have our backyard parties, and we're kind of like corralling all the artists together. We're like, hey, imagine this, but like a convention.
Yeah, Brandon seems like the gasoline that just keeps, we can keep going, which is awesome to have those people around.
Yeah, like I'll have these little things, but he's just like, oh no, we can go bigger, we can do this. Where I'm kind of like, I'm like, I'll say that like for every like 5 projects he does, like I do 1.
Yeah.
And so we go, and I think
We're going to pause right here. You guys absolutely crushed the Yearman Kickstarter. We're really pumped about that and excited about what is to come with Yearman. We have about 2 weeks left of the Yearman Kickstarter, and if you are looking to get in on one of the variants or get in on something incredible with that Kickstarter, now is the time to jump in. We absolutely would love your support. When we hit $13,333, everyone will be getting a free Yearman enamel pin, which we're really excited about. It's one of the cool things about a stretch goal is sometimes they're paid and sometimes it's just a free gift that we want to give. So jump onto the Kickstarter, show us some support. We would love to see it. Post about what you've already got, and let's do this together. Now let's get back to the show.
You know, we're making announcements. We're like, oh, we're gonna have this show,
Mhm.
you know, in 2020. You know, like Creature Bazaar, the show, and you know, we're setting it all up. We're meeting with everybody. We're like coming up with all these crazy exclusives that people are just like, you know, their minds are going to be blown if this thing actually goes off, the way that we imagined it. And then, you know, we go to Japan. You know, we're working on a bunch of projects in February, and then comes ToyCon UK in March. And so Brandon and I are in the UK, and we're actually with Shir Hamatoy, Dennis, out there. And then the pandemic hits.
Does the show pop off and then it hits? So you guys actually get through the show?
No.
Oh, dang.
It's kind of slow. It's weird. Cause it's like it's not fully there yet, but people are like, oh, there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's just like it's a very weird vibe. And it's from there, like at that show is when we actually cancel Creature Bazaar.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, this isn't going to happen because the show's happening. It was supposed to have happened April 2nd or April 3rd.
Okay.
You know, and it's like tables are sold out, like tickets are sold out, like it's crazy. You know?
Yeah, how do you get to all those people? I mean, once you get back from the UK, does it just become a mad dash to get to everyone and say like, hey, obviously you see what's going on. Our show is not continuing.
No, I mean, we did that. So it goes from like one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing an announcement from Disneyland. And they're like, oh, we're still open.
Yeah.
And then the next day they're closed. And then that's when so there's an announcement that we're making. We're like, oh, we're still figuring it out. Some of the vendors have decided to not attend. And then the next day, Disneyland's like announces that they're closed, and we're like, fuck it, if Disneyland's closed, we're definitely closed.
Yeah.
You know, and then we announce like we've just canceled the show and we're gonna refund everybody everything.
Yeah. And then we all go into lockdown, do all the cool stuff. But around this time, I hear rumblings of something really cool.
Yeah. So I'd say that more than anything, like, you know, I consider myself a little bit more of like a business guy than like an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And with the business, it's generally like pivoting. Like that's something that I feel like I'm relatively good at. Is just like, oh man, like this thing fell apart. All right, we got to switch it up and do this instead.
Mm-hmm.
And what had happened was a lot of our friends were developing product for the convention. And we're like, well, crap, like the convention's not happening. And now here's this like bulk of product that everybody wants. Like we have t-shirts being made. The brand Bounty Hunter had made shirts for us,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, they're like a legendary streetwear brand. And we're like, well, that's awful. You know, like this isn't happening. Like everybody's made all this product, and really fast, Brandon and I are like, well, we need to pivot. And we decide that like, well, what we're going to do is turn Creature Bazaar into sort of like a superstore. And like, just have all this inventory that like all of our friends have made. And like during this time, everybody's posting that they're selling their stuff that they had made for the convention. And we're like reposting everything. But then our friends that we're the closest with and what I would consider like the core of Creature Bazaar, they're like, well, you guys started this. Let's somehow keep it with you. And that's where like Brandon and I were like, well, let's do this. And what ended up happening was shipping from Japan was so expensive at this time. Like all the shipping rates had gone up.
Yeah.
And because we're all so close with everybody, we basically had everybody in Japan ship all their product to one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then that one guy shipped giant boxes to us. And then we became sort of the superstore that carried everything and just sold it on our website.
Which is rad. I mean, that's a good way. That's a masterclass at looking at the market and pivoting quickly.
Right. And this is like the show is canceled on March 12th. And we opened as a web store. We didn't have a web store at that point. On April 6th.
Okay. With less than a month up and running.
Yeah, up and running. We had, we were receiving inventory from the guys.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. We had painted a ton of stuff in preparation.
Around this time, maybe a little bit before, Paul has decided to stop doing SummerSlime, or has decided that he's not going to do that as much, right?
Well, so at this point, lockdown is in full effect.
Yeah.
Nobody's going anywhere.
Right.
And so, yeah, SummerSlime's not even a thought in anybody's minds.
Yeah.
And I think that's most of 2020 is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that once you're able to kind of like hang with people, like, and it's like no one's really afraid of like getting together, or everybody's taking tests and all that. Like, that's when Paul starts coming to my house like every few weeks to like hang out.
Yeah.
And I'll say that like during the pandemic, it was pretty much Brandon, and Brandon was the only person I ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we kept our grouping pretty tight, but because during this time we were just sort of formulating like how does Creature Bazaar work? Like, that's all we had to think about that whole time was Creature Bazaar. So it was kind of insane. But that's how I think we were able to pull off like a crazy web shop with like tons of different makers and all this in like less than a month.
Yeah. I mean, 2020, it opens up midsummer, pretty open. You get through the year. When do we have the first? I mean, you guys are there at the first conventions that start opening back up. When do we have the first SummerSlime following that?
The first SummerSlime is in 2021.
Okay.
And so at some point, this is the time when Michael Draculaser, he starts like when like flights are happening, he starts coming over and staying at my place, and like we're like painting toys, like we're working on toys together. And he does it every every few months he just come back.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have like a rig or a place that he can paint out in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would just like paint a bunch of his releases over at our house and hang, and we just hang. This was our like social circle,
which is dope, especially during this time. So
right,
he starts flying and getting over there. How do you kind of coax him into like moving here?
I think it was a natural thing. I think that he saw that he had like a strong support system out here between myself and Brandon. And I think it was time for a change for him.
Mm-hmm.
And it just probably was the easiest move for him. And he found a great apartment for himself and his girlfriend. And it all just worked out.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a percentage of his we factored into his decision, but it was part of it. I mean, he just kept flying over.
Yeah.
And we were doing like little the Monster Palooza shows.
Mm-hmm.
He would come in because that happens twice a year. And then he would also paint stuff for his own releases and kind of like sit on it. When he'd go home and do his online releases.
Yeah. How at this point, Paul, if the first SummerSlime happens in 2021, Paul moves it from San Diego up here.
So what ends up happening, and it's not even him that starts it. It's Buwana and John Rampage,
mm-hmm.
where you know, this is where like the parties in my backyard, like the us talking about trying to do something like that, and then basically Creature Bazaar as a convention not happening, but sort of like them seeing Brandon and I's willingness to want to sort of like manage these types of things kind of happens.
Yeah.
And so during the entire pandemic, I would have like specific days that I would call and talk to all the different guys that you would consider like a Creature Bazaar guy, including John and Bawana. And, independently, like they would talk to each other and they're like, hey, SummerSlime's kind of coming. The area that Paul had SummerSlime at originally is closed. Like he can't have them in San Diego anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The next best thing, because Quang has always had these sort of weird events at his place, maybe we could do it at his house. We had talked about it as like a thing at one point, and I think it might have been Bawana that reached out to me first, but he's just like, oh yeah, John and I were talking about it. What do you think? And then I was like, yeah, for sure. Like, let me talk to Brandon. Let's figure it out. But yes. And so after I agreed to it, then they reached out to Paul.
Yeah.
And just said, hey, like, Quang's agreed to this. Like, can we do it? And that's when we realized, because San Diego Comic-Con was opening up and like I had my own booth at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
That like we would have to, like, instead of having it that weekend, we would just push it back a week so that I could come back and then reset for Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
I mean for SummerSlime. So,
which is rad. And so Paul agrees, it happens. It doesn't look the same. So I just went last year, which we talked about, and it doesn't look the same as that. Tell me about the first year of SummerSlime and Creature Bazaar as a unit rocking together.
Yeah, so it's like that was the first time I ever really put together something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a lot of growing pains, and so one thing I realized when Paul would put together the show, it was sort of like there wasn't like social distancing and things like that, and so he would put it out and he would just have like a Facebook invite and like 2,000 people would RSVP like they're coming.
That's so crazy. Holy crap, that made my heart skip.
Yeah, and so really fast I was like, hey, we need to be able to control this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been to a few SummerSlimes prior, and not anywhere close does that many people show up to the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, we need people to be serious if they're going to RSVP for this. And that's when I sort of come up with the idea of like, well, we've got to charge tickets. And Paul, when he was running the show for a few years, had like just food and all these things that he'd pay for out of his pocket. Now, Creature Bazaar at this point is fairly successful, but I really don't want to pay for any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, well, I'm also not trying to make money off of people, but I need to be able to control the audience or control attendance. And so that's when I'm talking with the guys and we come up with the idea of the shirts and like essentially charging, but then I need to charge enough that people are not going to just pay $5 and not show up and make things weird for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it needs to be enough so that it's like, if they flake, it's like not that big of a deal. And maybe I'm up or something like that. But, we're like, oh, let's put shirts on it because I like event t-shirts, but I don't like being stuck with a box, like trying to sell them at a show.
Correct. Because
like,
shirts
I don't want to
don't move.
Yeah. I don't want to box them after. And so we kind of come up with these things where it's like Moana, every year he was at SummerSlime would come up with this incredible art, and it's sort of used as a flyer and then never used again.
Mm-hmm.
And so this time around, I'm like, well, why don't we turn this art into a shirt? And that's what ends up happening is that, like, okay, now we can charge a little bit for the shirt and for the food that everybody gets when they come.
Yeah.
And, you know, truth be told, we actually still lose money
Yeah.
on it, but
Well,
like,
it's for the love of the game.
right. Like I'm losing like $1,000. I'm not losing like $8,000 trying to
Yeah.
feed a couple hundred people, you know?
Yeah. So
And
that
so,
first one that you guys do every year, that's 2021, every year, things don't change. They just get adjusted slightly, right? Like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
we need to fix things here. Maybe that.
right. And it goes really well. And that's where, like, you know, Brandon and I work really well together as sort of like almost like acting like, okay, like dissecting the whole process of how the show works, and then being like, okay, this is the check-in process, this is ticket sales, this is
Mhm.
how this works, you know, and making it feel like it's a special event for everybody that attends, but also being organized enough that it's like it runs smoothly,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
I think it is cool to see because it shows the success of Creature Bazaar, right? So last year going to that and then seeing you guys at Designer Con and you guys host the karaoke and you guys do all these cool things that are just they're like solidifying you more and more every year that you do them as like this is just what we do. We do this because we love it.
I think it's important to make everybody feel like they're being seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we really strive for with anybody that comes to one of the events or anybody that we sort of like engage with. And that was one of those things of like with SummerSlime, we could make it bigger, we could make it crazier, but it's like with the people that attend, it's just like it's hard enough to engage with those like that amount of people. Going any bigger, I think, would be a disservice to them.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we had talked about with anything we do, is just trying to be there for like the audience. Cause to me, you know, and I'm quoted for saying this like in a number of places, but it's like we're not interested in like getting bigger. It's just getting weirder.
Yeah. 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 Which is
You
a
know,
great way to describe toy makers.
it's just like it's about having fun, and I'd say that I think I'm fortunate enough to work with a bunch of guys that can see like the big picture for a lot of things. I think most artists are very self-absorbed,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like me, like this is how it is. I was like, no, I'm trying to, or we're trying to do things for the landscape
Yeah.
of the scene, and like keep people engaged and have fun with it, because there's like when it gets into the kinds of things that we create, there's actually like a very limited audience for it. It's not
Yeah.
like crazy huge.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about it before that, like, when we talk about like TMNT stuff that gets produced, like that helps because it goes to a different market. And maybe when they come in, they see something that's like
Yeah.
part of this world. And, but yeah, it really is a limited space.
Yeah, you know, and like the parody stuff, it like it opens a different kind of door.
Mhm.
You know, like I know a lot of guys come into the space through like some of like the resin 3 3/4 bootleg stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, this is cool." And then they're like, "Oh, what's this other stuff that's sold in the same it's like similar but totally different."
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just like, "Oh, they might like this stuff better," you know? And so it's just people have their own ways of sort of like getting to this stuff. And my job is sort of like to keep them here, or to like show them that we're more than just toys. I think that like it one of the things that we really realized going to like doing a bunch of shows overseas and like engaging with people at events here is that people like run up, buy a bunch of stuff, and then run away.
Hmm.
You know, it's not, it's like, it's kind of social, but not really. But once you get people talking, it's like fun. And that's where it got into, you know, right when we got back from the pandemic, and there was like the first Monster Palooza show, I believe. Um, you know, I was talking to Dan from Unbox, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to show this stuff off in like a different way. Let's do something cool." I was like, "Yeah, Brandon and I've been kicking around these ideas. I'm really close with this movie theater that I live next to, where like Brandon and I would host like movie nights for them during the pandemic, where they would like essentially create like a drive-in movie theater, like during the lockdown, and people would drive up and then park, and then like um you know, it would be like us on a microphone and then going back to our cars and things like that,
Yeah,
like
which is
just
rad.
like social distancing kind of thing. But I'm like, yeah, I have this really great relationship with this movie theater. Maybe we can do an event where we sell toys and show movies at the same time, and have it like have people really engage in like a funny way.
Hmm.
You know, something that's not really been done before. Like I had hosted movie nights. Um, I think I started maybe in like 2012 or something like that. Um, and so I'd known a lot of movie theaters, but then it was always in the back of my head to start doing some sort of like special thing.
Yeah.
And that's when that decon, that when we came back from the pandemic, we had done it a few times. Well, we had done like decon, and then when Dan was just like, "Oh, I want to do something more. What can we do?" That's when I was like, "Oh, let's try this movie theater event." And that's where like we did this show called Creature Vision that was like pretty insane,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, you've got amazing stuff going on with Creature Bazaar and the leaps and bounds that you've taken. Tell me about this year, because when this comes out, tickets are on sale. We're excited. We're getting ready to go. So tell me what's coming for this year. Same posse's going to be there, same stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we don't deviate too much.
Yeah.
Because now it's just like we have figured out who our core is,
Hmm.
and the guys that are reliable with producing things. I'll say that this designer con that's coming up, which by the time people hear this, it had already happened.
Yeah.
But it was like this was also a massive pivot. I'll say that like when Decon called me before they announced anything about doing the show, it was like a mad dash for me to figure out what kind of items we'd have available.
Hmm.
And, you know, and I had to pivot and like almost like take items from other shows that we had planned and just have them at Decon this year. And we're lucky that we think so far ahead and we produce the stuff that, you know, to where I have the blanks that I can like kind of alter a little bit so they would be like a Decon special kind of figure.
Yeah.
Um, and then, you know, we have SummerSlime, which is, you know, it's going to be great. Paul recently had hip surgery.
Yeah, I did, dude. I reached out to him and I said, if you guys need because I'm down here by him.
Right.
If they need anything, it's a quick text of like, even if it's food, like don't like get
Right.
rest. Holy moly.
Yeah. So it'll be exciting for him to kind of be like back, you
Yeah.
know, I you know, cause he's not really going to be with us at the Decon Pasadena cause he's still healing.
Hmm.
But he was just like, I'm going to be ready for SummerSlime.
Cool.
I mean, that's his, you know, we might run it, but it's his show,
Yeah.
you know? And so that's exciting. You know, through all of this, you know, we had been doing our own little events in Japan for the longest time. And last year was when Mandarake allowed for us to take over their store,
Hmm.
which is something that has never happened. And which is like, crazy to think about given like what they do and their business and everything. And the fact that we're a bunch of Westerners and they really like what we do and how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically had told us, they're like, oh, we want to do this with you till we don't want to anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Which is that's a good agreement.
Right. Like I remember we did our Mandrake show with them last year and it went awesome. It was great. And then I asked them, I was like, oh, hey, like, so who are you going to do after us? And they're like, what are you talking about? Nobody. Like, we just want to keep doing it with you guys over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And which is incredible. So we have that coming up in August. August 30th is the day of that show, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So you're going to have to make enough stuff for SummerSlime and Mandarake.
Right.
Rad.
And then we have the smaller Geeking Out show right after that.
In September, right?
Right after SummerSlime. The week after SummerSlime, we have Geeking Out.
Rad. It's going to be...
Geeking Out, we have San Diego Comic-Con and G-Fest.
Yeah. Are you splitting... Oh, they're not around the same time, though, right?
Oh, no, they're basically like a week after each other or 2 weeks after each other.
So you hear them there or there than here. Rad.
Right.
Cool. I mean, you guys are busy, but this is a product of what you've created, which is a cool way to stop, pause, and say, like, this is what I've always wanted.
Yeah. I mean, we're, and through that, there's a lot of things that have kind of come out that are really exciting. I mean, we didn't even talk about the chaos of all the Pop Shop Live things that we ended up having to do, which is how the whole Creature Vision thing really kind of started.
Mm-hmm.
And then even our partnership with the Magnificent World of Toys, where he's kind of come in and filmed a lot of our stuff and helped kind of like put SummerSlime on the pedestal that it always sort of deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was something that happened, it just would happen and sort of disappear. And now we have these sort of video time capsules that kind of show off each year, which is really fun. I feel very fortunate that we have those kinds of people around us and then like the kind of people that kind of recognize the kind of work that Brandon and myself have put in that like want to do bigger things. I mean, we're lucky that even DesignerCon, I think that we were one of the first people they contacted about their Pasadena show to make sure that we were in, because they're like, well, we can't really do it without you guys. And of course I was like, yeah, Ben, we go back, like, I can't even remember when we first met, but like, we go back so far.
Yeah.
That we've got his back no matter what.
Yeah. Which is incredible. Quang, your life has been a crazy journey, and the birth and life of Creature Bazaar has been absolutely insane, and we're excited for all the stuff coming up and all that. So, I mean, thank you so much for coming on Toys on Tap for part 2.
Oh yeah, no, and like, I feel like we could keep going on and on and on, but I'm just really happy to put some of the stuff out there and to let people know that like at the end of the day, we're here. We want to help like promote the fandom, promote the scene, and do kind of like unique things that help like pull people together in a fun way.
Yeah, dude. Thank you.
And get ready for karaoke again this year for DesignerCon Vegas.
Heck yeah. It'll be so much fun.